Over the last few weeks then, we've seen the increasing involvement of Nigel Farage. One of the things that Nigel Farage is talking about, probably as the main point, is immigration. And while that arguably affects some areas more than others, it is a key point, isn't it, of reform. What's your view on that policy then with reform?
I think the level of immigration into the country is too high. The IFS have forecast between now and 2035 there'll be 14 million more people coming into the country. At the moment we have net migration. That means the difference between the people leaving, which is 400,000, and the people coming, which is 1.3 million a year, means we end up with 800,000 or 900,000 more people in the country every year. We need schools, we need hospitals, we need roads, all of the other services that they demand, and we just can't develop the country at the pace to keep up with these extra people that are coming into the country. So we're not calling for no migration, we're calling for a sensible level of migration, essential services, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, carers into the country, but not the unlimited immigration we've got at the moment.
And a phrase that you hear quite a lot is, reform, it's right wing or even ultra right wing. And I think it seems to be a term that people use, and I'm not always sure that they know what they're really trying to get at. What's your take on that, and why people, if you like, label reform as really right wing, if you like?
I think it's just a lazy name to bandy about, to throw at somebody, a party particularly that's rising in the polls, that people that's popular. We get called populist. Well, what's wrong with being popular? Surely the purpose of democracy is to represent the people rather than to represent global organisations pushing commands down from up on high. So if we're popular and we're right of centre, I think that's a good thing. It seems to be that if you believe in resilience and looking after yourself and your family, you're somehow odd, which I think the right of centre to me is where traditional British values lie and always have been. And look at the most successful parties of the last 100 years, they've always been right of centre.
And talking about the popularity then of reform, I think recent polls have shown it sort of not just nudging equal with the Conservatives, just nudging slightly in front. So, it's been termed as it's now the party that's going to challenge Labour, particularly at the moment. What do you attribute that to then? I suppose you've touched on it already.
Well, yes. I'd never judge anything by one poll. The only ones I really look at are poll of polls, but we are going up in the polls if you look at the averages. There's definitely been an impact because of Nigel Farage returning, because he brings a lot of personality with him and a lot of profile, which is great. But our membership numbers were going up before Nigel arrived back. We've had a bounce of probably 10 or 15% in the last 2 weeks, which is really heartening.
So you're standing then as the first Reform UK candidate to stand in a national election in Harrogate.
That's right.
What has led you to want to do that, to represent Reform in Harrogate in that way?
Right, I'd been a traditional Conservative voter for quite a long time, and really the last 5 to 10 years I've just become so disillusioned with the direction of travel of the Conservative Party, away from what I believe is the true Conservatism, which is protecting our country, our culture, our values, our heritage, looking after our people. We've moved into, or they've moved into, more of a socialist model, where they're redistributing high tax, massive state, and it's not what I believe in. And the key for me was COVID and lockdown and the draconian measures that they chose to take, which impinged on our personal freedoms so horrendously that I just thought, I've had enough. I need to find somewhere that represents me, and I found Reform. I joined them in 2023. I worked with them for a year and a half, got the opportunity to stand as the PPC. I applied for the position, I got the position, and I'm really proud to represent Reform in Harrogate and Knaresborough and push our policies, which really are policies that ordinary people can relate to, and for want of a better word, they're common sense. We have to get the state under control and we have to maintain people's personal freedoms. So we're for lower taxes, freedoms, controlling immigration into the country, because it's an argument that we have to have, because the infrastructure and the country are creaking at the seams. Hospitals, schools, the roads, drains, rail, everything is creaking at the seams. So we have to control the number of people in the country.
One of the things that's been talked about is democracy then, and the public feeling that they're being listened to, and being taken into account. So we're getting lots of manifesto sort of items, almost like daily, thrown at us from the sort of the Labour and the Conservative Party. What's your view and what's the approach of the Reform Party then on a manifesto?
Well, our manifesto is going to be published shortly, actually today, I believe at 1 o'clock. It won't be much different to what our contract states, which is a range of common sense policies dealing with all of the major issues that the UK faces. But turning to local democracy, I think definitely one of the reasons reform is popular is that people just feel they're not being listened to by the main parties. In Harrogate, for example, we used to have a town council, that's now disappeared. So all power and control is up in Northallerton at North Yorkshire County Council headquarters, and we get decisions that do not consider the local people's needs. Gateway project, which has got no support locally, ultra low vehicle zones, 20 mile an hour speed limits that are put in without proper consultation. When consultation is carried out, it's done at the last minute and it's very superficial, which means it's meaningless, and local opposition is still there to these schemes. So I'm advocating the return of Harrogate Town Council, which I believe is considered for early next year. I'm a strong supporter of that, and we're having 4 to 6 candidates already putting their names forward to me to stand as councillors, and that means we'll get democracy and decision making back into Harrogate.
In Harrogate then we've got Conservatives that are fighting to retain the seat, and we've got Lib Dems that are putting a lot of money and a lot of time, and they see it as a very much a target seat for the Lib Dems. But then we've also got yourself as Reform, and Reform's polling stats are doing good numbers.
Yes.
Lib Dems are sort of saying, oh, it's between Conservatives and Lib Dems. What's your view on that?
Well, locally, the Lib Dems have got a vested interest in maintaining a vote in Harrogate. It's between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives. It may have been in the past, it certainly isn't today, and it won't be in the future, because the control over that narrative is in the hand of the voters. And I think the voters in Harrogate are ready for change. I think nationally people are ready for change. That's why we're polling up at 20% in the national polls. We're a threat. We've got clear policies. I haven't really heard anything from the Lib Democrats that talks about anything that's going to make life better for people in the country, apart from a few small details of things. But nobody's talking about, for example, how we pay for all of these fancy things. We've got to get the only solution is to get the economy motoring, to get the country free, get taxes down and spend the money wisely.